Deep beyond the mainstream media's version of the financial crisis, we have supranational entities colluding with the governments, the politicians, the bankers in order to siphon money away from the citizens into the hands of the elite. So today we will discuss exactly how this is taking place within Greece at the moment. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's begin with this article first, and we're going to talk about Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about the tech stocks that are in fact in a bubble. Look at this. 2-year-old companies are valued in the billions, ramshackle homes are worth millions, and hubris has reached the point where otherwise sane business people muse about seceding from the United States. This is in fact a bubble. There's no other way to say it. So we need to look at the financial markets and we need to realize who is invested in this right now. Well, we have a lot of stock buybacks that are taking place. I've showed you the statistics before, but if you exclude Apple from all of this bubble that's taking place, in fact, they're actually not doing very well. But you need to take the whole sector as it is, and they seem to be doing all right. There are a lot of stock buybacks going on right now that is pushing the entire stock market upward. But we know that specifically, like it mentions here, these 2-year-old companies valued in the billions, that's called a bubble, and there's no other way to mention it. So what happens when a bubble forms is that ultimately it bursts. Let's look at this here, showing you Greece. They were infected with the disease of the credit default swaps, and now today they are in a much different situation. Modern ruins the ghost factories of Greece. If you look at this article out of The Guardian, basically goes through and lists a bunch of different pictures, and I really recommend checking this out. It looks like, if you didn't know it was Greece, you would think it was a war-torn country in the Middle East after the US and their drone warfare had passed through. That's how bad it looks. This is just one image that you can see here. So it happens to be at the top of the page, but there are tons of pictures in here showing you this and the disaster that the financial weapons of mass destruction can cause. This is very serious. Let's look at this out of Forbes. They're basically talking about Germany and their influence over Greece. They talk about the IMF and essentially very good information here, but I just wanted to note what's at the bottom of the page where they say it would be entirely logical if it doesn't happen. We're looking at a scenario like Cyprus with capital controls and banks closed, as close as you can get to the Euro exit. I've said this before, but I do not believe that Greece will be allowed to leave the Eurozone unless they've completely raped the country and stolen everything that they need to. They would have never have been included in the first place if they simply wanted them to leave. They don't care how weak a nation is. They want to bring them in. That's what they are doing here, is forming as much of the control as they possibly can. They want to have control, so they allow them to become part of this union that forms. But it's projected out in the mainstream media that this is for trade, that this is to make people's traveling easier, and all of these other false ideas where it really isn't a hard time to have to trade in between two countries. You don't need to have some sort of similar interest rate or currency or anything like this. You don't need that. All you need is a simple agreement between the two nations to trade a certain amount of goods or services or what have you. That's all. You don't need to use this union that are being formed. Look at the TPP that's out there, and we have much to be concerned about because of what is underlying in these agreements and trade pacts, all these different deals that we have going on today. Not just the TPP, but there are so many that are just going on all behind the scenes, and of course we're never allowed to know what happens. These are the supranational entities that take over, and they are the ones who are dictating everything that is occurring. This is right here is the German finance minister. He said that they might have to bring in a parallel currency if progress stalls in negotiations with the country's European creditors. What kind of parallel currency are they talking about? Well, Bloomberg reports that during the private meeting, he mentioned the idea of Greece bringing in a second currency, which would be the first step to a messy exit from the Eurozone. Now, don't necessarily think that they're going to bring back the drachma. We could have a situation that is going on today in many third world nations where they use, for example, the US dollar as their alternate currency. They want more stability. They know that by buying the US dollar, they can have that stability. And, many countries do use, in fact, more than one currency, and oftentimes using the US dollar. This is just one example. They can use any, in fact, currency, but what we're looking at here is just what they're saying, that they could introduce the parallel currency, and that, don't necessarily think that it is just the drachma, although it certainly could be. In my book, I talked about Greece getting their bailout. In this instance here, I'm talking about the $147 billion bailout from the IMF and other European countries, and that was the first one. And later in the book, I predicted that they would get not only a second one, but they would continue with that. Of course, it's pretty simple to realize that, because these countries will continue to get bailed out because the governments around the world fear the result of a full-out bankruptcy or default. What would happen if one nation went bankrupt? That would basically set the precedent for further bankruptcies, further defaults. This is what's going to happen, in fact, because they're going to allow them to get as weak as possible, and then right when they're at the bottom, when that nation has been basically pushed to the ground by all these credit default swaps, by all the ridiculous terms that are given to them by the IMF, by the other nations, the supranational entities like the EU, what we're going to have here is, in fact, another bailout, another even worse terms, and you're going to have this being taken place in not just Greece, but all of the other nations who are weakened as well. Let's move on to this here. It is something that's updating. Germany and IMF oppose the quick Greek deal, but Athens is still hopeful. If you want to see the updates from The Guardian, this is the page you want to go to. The link will be in the description as always. And what we have here is a situation that is really hard on Greece, or hard on the people of Greece, in fact, where the unemployment rate reached a new high. I haven't covered that specifically yet, but the unemployment rate hit something like 26 or 28% at this moment. This is not good for the people of Greece, and in fact, despite all of this effort, all of the negotiations that are taking place, everything's getting worse. That's what we need to realize. Let's look at this here, where we're talking about Germany. And there's a lot of immigrants coming from Africa that are moving through Italy and into these other nations within Europe and the area. And what we have is a situation where nations like Canada, like the US, like France, they bombed Libya, they destroy them, use all the taxpayer money from these nations, and they set the country ablaze. And then what happens is the people, obviously in the hardship, are in search of a better home. So they go to the nearest locations, whether that's Italy, whether that's another one, and they basically seek refuge. So what we have is a situation that Germany is finding themselves in, and they're saying last year Germany received 173,000 refugee applications and accepted most of them. What is this going to do for the nation of Germany? What does this do, in fact, for the Latin American countries that are, many people are fleeing the bad situation that is going on in their nations, going to the United States and going to other places? What we have is a burden upon the taxpayer. This continues to expand as the social assistance programs and other programs that they have set up in order to help these individuals who are in fact in need. What you also have is a block of people that are there to support the government, who are in fact helping them out. So it's a little bit of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and you have this really a huge block of people who are willing to vote for the current government, whether that's the Democrats, the Republicans, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Wage disparity drives up inequality in Germany. A report on Thursday showed that while the gap between the rich and the poor is somewhat stabilized in Germany since the economic crisis, the rich and the highly educated continue to gain more, while the poor struggle, creating some of the biggest wealth gaps among the developed countries. What we're having here is the same thing, not just in Germany, but everywhere around the world, where you have a divide between the rich and the poor, this chasm, this schism that has formed, that I continue to talk about. I've mentioned this from various countries, showed you the statistics, in fact, of many of these nations having the exact same problem because it's a global issue. You try to just analyze one nation, you put the blinders on, and then you wonder why you can't figure anything out. That's the mainstream media. They never ever connect the dots, in fact, because they know how dangerous that really is. Let's look at this. Germany's got these issues right now dealing with Greece and everything, and what does the German army chief of staff say? They are needing more money. In fact, they need 4 billion more. Not just a little bit of money, they need 4 billion more, but of course with the military industrial complex, 4 billion really isn't much. So, you can read the article for yourself. I just wanted to mention that despite all of this turmoil and all of these situations that are occurring in Europe with so much money being needed for useful things to help the poor, to get the economy going again, what are they going to use it on? On building up the arms. And that's what happens, and they bomb innocent people in nations that most people don't even know where they are on the map. And they just say, look, glass parking lot, the whole place, I don't care as long as I'm safe and I can wave my flag so I could be a patriot and all of this business. When you have people who couldn't fight back if they really wanted to, and they're just being bombed as an excuse for people to be in fear. This is all being used against us. This is a program that has been going on forever, and people aren't able to realize it. Why? Because their face is directly into their iPhones, directly into their televisions, and they are in fact zombies. If you made it to this far in the video, however, perhaps you're not one of those, and I certainly hope so. Finally, we have some positive information, and I am proud to bring this to you. It's a little bit of good information, but I have to bring it out. Anytime I see something good, I at least want to bring that out. Patriot Act on life support after Rand Paul stymies renewal efforts. Liberals and libertarians block short-term reauthorizations, leaving a tiny window of opportunity next week for a deal. Rand Paul, among others, or a few others, I should say, are among the good people in the government. We may not agree on everything they do, but at the very least, we have some level of positivity, and I am very happy about this situation that is taking place. At the very least, they're willing to say, look, I don't want to be spied on. I don't want my family to be spied on, my children to be spied on. Every one of their pictures that they take are being spied on by the NSA. All of their communications, whether it's phone calls, whether it's text messages, emails, every store they've ever gone to, their license plates, everything is all being databased and categorized by the NSA. In fact, all nations around the world, we just spoke about this recently, how Germany is giving their information over to the NSA in the United States. Why? Because it's a global effort from the supranational elite against the citizens. This is what has been happening. Don't think for a second that this is one country versus another. They're all in this together. It isn't the governments that are in control. It is those above the governments. Look at who's funding these individuals. Look at the campaign contributions that I've showed here many times before. That's how you're going to find the truth. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate all that very much. As we head beyond 20,000 subscribers, hello to each and every single one of you. I try to get back to the comments on here. Just to let you know, if you're new on here, I can only reply to basically the current day's video or the previous day's video, usually 1 or 2 days worth, and then unfortunately I don't have time to get back into the further ones. I do respond to all emails though. If you really want to get a hold of me, david@themoneygps.com, and I will in fact reply to you. I've replied to pretty much every single email. So if you've emailed me a little while ago and you haven't received a reply, then perhaps it got stuck in the junk mail or something. Please contact me on there. Last but not least, if you found this video informative, I know that you will find my book even more informative, and you can actually look through the book at Amazon. They have a look inside feature where you can go through, flip through it, and see if you like it for yourself. Take care.